Good morning.
Good morning. So today is March 6th, 2022, and our topic today is finding inner peace in outer war. And I must share with you that I came up with this topic because that's what I was working on yesterday. I said, how can I find inner peace when I'm so distressed with what's going on in the world? So we'll talk about that more. But I found a wonderful quote from Ernest Holmes that I'm going to read instead of the daily prayer that way I usually do. And this is from his book, The Essential, Ernest Holmes. And he says, we are now seeing the necessity of a world law, to the maintenance of which all nations, great and small, shall contribute the best way they have, that the strong shall protect the weak without overpowering them, that the great shall live with the small without subduing them, that cooperation shall take the place of aggression, that government shall rule without tyranny through the common consent of the governed, and that the individual freedom shall unfurl its flag of liberty on the ramparts. I probably will repeat that during our talk, but I thought it was a beautiful description of what we want, from our point of view, and probably what everybody wants from their point of view on earth.
I think the hardest part for me of all of this is seeing such horror and not being able to do anything about it and feeling unable to do anything about it. And I think the feeling of helplessness that I experience is the feeling of helplessness only made much, much larger of the people that are actually in the situation that we're viewing. And so then the question is, do our prayers or does anything that we do make a difference? And I think what happens is the war dwarfs the energy that we have because ours is a subtle energy. But I had to go round and round and round with that and think a lot about, what is it? And first off, the thing that came to me when I was meditating was there are no extras. In other words, you're not an extra and I'm not an extra. We're not extras on a play. We're primary players. Each of us has a primary role. Each of us is important. And then what I realized when I thought about that was that each of us has the opportunity to change consciousness one person at a time. And that changing that consciousness creates a cascading effect that changes everything. And it may not be visible to everybody, but it is visible. It does make a difference. And Judith will talk more about probably some of the studies that have been done and the research that's been done that shows that when thousands of people prayed, millions of people stopped having battles and stopped fighting. And what happens when any of us makes a change is everything changes. But the other thing I wanted to add to that, and I'm going to let Judith talk for the next 20 minutes. No, the other thing I wanted to add to that is, and this is pretty scary stuff, is that everything happening on the outside is also happening on the inside. And when I say that, murder, as we see it being committed, we all have a murderous part of ourselves. It's a disowned part, but it's a murderous part of us. I mean, we kill a cockroach and think nothing of it because we've decided that cockroach doesn't belong in our house or doesn't belong or shouldn't have a life. We exterminate all kinds of things. We have an exterminator in our consciousness. And so one of the horrible things about war is seeing that part of us exposed and having us have a chance to not have that part of us be in action. And so really what we have are choices as to what will we allow to be active, not who's good and who's bad. And I think it would be a lot easier if there were good people and bad people. But the truth is good people do bad things. And they do bad things because that part of themselves that gives permission for bad behavior has been allowed. And so this war situation really allows us in a very horrible way to see ourselves, the reflection of who we are at all levels, and to choose what will we do, what will we say, how will we be? Not, I'm not like that, or that's not me. If pushed into a corner, if the conditions are made right, we'll do a lot of things that we say we wouldn't do. So now how can we do and say what we will say and do for peace?
Well, and of course, we're talking about Russia's invasion of Ukraine that occurred about 10 days ago,
Yeah.
and is still going on. And, you know, each side has their view of what's happening. And, it surprises me to hear the other side. And yet they believe it as fervently as the West and Ukraine feel about that they are being invaded, that they want to be a democracy. They are a democratic country and they're being invaded. And Putin sees Ukraine, and Putin and Russia see Ukraine largely as part of them, and that they have been seduced away by the West. And Putin does not want a Western democracy on his border. And he considers Ukraine part of theirs, and he wants it back, along with this pipeline through it.
Yeah, there's a few other obstacles and a few other issues having to do with
Pipeline for
money
his
and
oil through it.
finances and all of that.
So I'm laughing, but it's not at all funny, and it's been very distressing. And I think one of the main reasons it's so distressing is that it's in our living rooms. This is war in our living rooms. We actually have about 7 conflicts going on around the globe, and nearly always do. The war in Myanmar. Oh, it's not really a war. It's a military takeover that's killing a lot of people. So I guess they might consider it a war. We have still, of course, war going on in Syria. That's been going on for 10 years. And yet it's not in our living room every day. And, Burkina Faso is having a lot of conflict there. And Kazakhstan is having conflict, and Colombia and Venezuela. And so it's really all over the place. So we say, well, why is this with Ukraine so disturbing to us? Well, it really is. I mean, I talk to people in our movement, and we largely have learned to know that peace of mind is our job, and it's an inner job. Mm-hmm. And yet I find people really disturbed by watching what's happening and feeling very helpless to help. I think that's part of the disturbance is
right.
Why aren't we helping? And of course, as a country, why aren't we helping? Is we're trying to avoid a bigger conflagration, nuclear conflagration. So we're trying to avoid that, which of course would be awful. And our country is helping in ways that it can without going to war with Russia. But mostly I think it's just right in our living rooms, and we're seeing it, we're hearing it, and it's very painful. I look forward to the day when we will continue to have these conflicts until such time war is an unthinkable concept that you just wouldn't consider it. I loved it in the Vietnam War when there became a saying, what if we gave a war and nobody came? Like if you give a party and nobody comes, what if we gave a war and nobody came? Mm-hmm. Meaning, what if our young men refused to fight? Because some of these young men, Russian young men, were not prepared to go to war. They were told they were going to a 2-week military exercise and were not at all prepared for going to war, and were calling home crying to mama when they found out they were expected to do that.
So I think this is a time for us to obviously meditate and pray and do all that we can in favor of peace, but also it's a time for us to examine ourselves and to ask ourselves, what am I doing for inner peace? What does this stir up in me that needs to be resolved that I'd rather not have paid attention to? I know when I'm on the road and somebody cuts me off, I don't bless them. I hold my foot back from wanting to follow them to let them know that it wasn't okay. There's a part of me that is just as outrageous as the behavior that I'm offended by. And what I have to do is to say, how will I handle that? What will I do with that? So I'd say in the inner world, this is an opportunity for us to examine ourselves and say, where is the peace in me, and where is the warrior in me, and how can I tend to that? And as we tend to our inner warrior, as we tend to our inner angry person, or the person who wants to get even, or the person who is spiteful and small-minded, as we tend to that, we tend to the world. And so praying for peace in another country while we are at war with ourselves is self-defeating. And so I would say this war, as horrible as it is a chance for us to examine our own inner war and to resolve it.
Well, that's what I came up with yesterday. I woke up unhappy. I went to the beach for a beach walk. I was still just, I said, how can I be happy, with this going on in the world? And then I really asked myself the question, how can I find inner peace when there is this outer war going on? And of course, the answer came immediately. I know it. I've taught it for 20 odd years. And that is that I have to find my own inner peace within. I have to go within to find peace. I'm not going to find it in the outer. So I can, as we learn in meditation, to just close out the outer, go within. There is that spark of the divine within us. Some call it our soul, some call it our spirit, that always knows that all is well, no matter how much conflict is going on out here. Inside, there's that part of you that is eternal, that never dies, that can't be harmed, that knows that all is well. And you can feel that inner peace when you go there. And the studies that Bob said I would mention were transcendental meditation studies that they did in big cities throughout, certainly this country and probably other countries, where they would gather transcendental meditators and meditate like for over the weekend or long periods of time. And they found in every single case, crime went down, arrests went down, everything violent went down when there was this vibration going on in the city. And so sometimes for me, that feels like I'm not doing anything. That's not doing anything to help the war. But if every one of us works on our own nonviolence, our own ability to find peace, it does help peace in the world. I find it frustratingly not enough. In other words, I'd like to be able to do more to bring about the change we want to see in the world.
You wouldn't think that paint on the wall would change behavior. But when they started painting emergency rooms, many emergency rooms, different shades of pink, the level of violence that was occurring in those emergency rooms was diminished significantly. If you can change the color of the wall and have that affect the outcome of people's behavior, then don't tell me that actually thinking about changing the world can't change it. And a piece of that too, you've sat down next to somebody and you didn't know and felt the energy and wanted to be near it or wanted to be away from it. And you didn't know why necessarily, but you knew that there was something going on because it affected you. And our thoughts and our feelings do affect each other and they affect us. There's also stories, I don't know if you've heard them or not, Baha'u'llah, who was the founder of the Baha'i faith, was in prison for a long period of time. So you could say that as a prisoner, he should have acted like a prisoner. But in fact, what happened was, and this is the story, many people saw him in different places over the course of the time he was in prison, doing the work that he needed to do. And as a metaphor or as a true story, what's interesting is that even if you're physically imprisoned, you don't have to be in prison. And some of us are not imprisoned physically, we're imprisoned by the thinking that we do, by our willingness to agree to suffer when we don't have to. And Judith is reading.
I'm reading, and I'm reading things that you were going to say.
Right. We have these great discussions before we talk, and then
I'm aware of, and I hope you are, that there are global meditations that you're invited on the internet with various organizations, including our own. We have a minister who started a ministry in Ukraine, and she's turned it over to the Ukrainians now, but she's leading guided meditations.
Reverend Barbara Leger.
Leger. It's spelled Ledger, but it's pronounced Leger. She's from Canada. And so, yes, and if you'd like to be a part of those, if you're not seeing those online, contact me and I'll let you know some of those that are going on. Our own organization, Centers for Spiritual Living, are doing morning candlelight lightings and I don't know if it's a meditation, but it's a morning spiritual reading and discussion by our spiritual leader, Dr. Edward Viljoen. interestingly, he starts by reading one of the Ernest Holmes readings from 365, as I usually do on Sundays. And that would be at 9 o'clock our time, and it's on YouTube. So again, if you would like to participate in that as a joint prayer and contemplation, contact me and I can maybe I'll do a newsletter and get that out to all of you.
I think why this is really important too is that in times of crisis or enormous stress, I don't find myself nor anyone else that I know doing nothing. We're doing something. It's either in favor of us, in favor of an outcome that we'd like, or it's in favor of the idea that isn't going to work. I know when I used to do competition bike riding, I was saying to myself, I can do this, or I was saying to myself, I can't. I wasn't saying maybe. I wasn't not doing anything. I was either having to move in consciousness forward because of the stress I was feeling, or agree that I wasn't going to be able to move forward. And so I would suggest to any of you that are struggling, struggle forward, struggle with words and action and thought that favors an outcome you would like, because the odds are pretty good when you're under a lot of stress that you're going to favor something. And I know it's easy when I watch the news to favor the worst possibility. And what I notice when I watch it, the longer I watch it, the more I'm waiting for the more bad news. And the more I'm anticipating the more bad news, the more I seem to be consciously in favor of a negative outcome. What I need to be able to do is to see the news and say, okay, this is the condition that's happening right now. This condition doesn't have to continue. I too can have an impact on this condition. And you know, if you visited somebody in a hospital that's been sick, and you look in the doorway and you see them and they look in pain, you can see them suffering, and you know how awful they feel. As you walk into the room and they see you, and because they care about you and you care about them, you notice the change. They light up. They have more energy. And I've seen this again and again in a hospital setting where people that were having their last day of life and seemingly had no more life left in them came alive for the people that cared for them. I'd like us to come alive for the people that we care for. And even if we don't know them, we can care for them.
Yeah, that speaks to what I wanted to speak to. Many of us have the belief that I have to be distressed to do something to make a change. Let's just take the political arena. Many people feel I have to be angry at what's happening, or I won't be motivated to do the things that I need to do to make the change. And when our teaching, that's really off base. You don't want to use anger to get what you want. You want to use visualization, what it is you want to see happen in the world. You want to use love and peace. And it's the same thing in this situation with war. We don't want to see war, but getting upset and angry about it is not going to create what we want. So we have to find our own inner peace, and we have to then use that energy, that frame of mind to do the things. If there are any things that we can do, join prayer groups, join meditation groups, contact our senators and representatives if we think that would be useful, but do it from a place of love and peace, because that will create more of that in your life and in the life of others. So that matches what you were saying with use it forward. What was your phrase?
Yeah. Well, we're either moving forward or we're moving backward. We're never standing still. When people tell me they're treading water, that means they're getting ready to drown, and that's opposed to swimming. You can swim until you don't get to your destination, or you can tread water and hope that somebody's going to come and save you. And I think a lot of times in consciousness, we spend more time treading water, admitting that we're not going to be able to do it for very long, which is we're just being very nice to ourselves after having given up. And I think it's really important that we not give up, and that we clearly swim in the direction that we would like to see things happen. And the biggest point I want to make today, and I think I've already made it, but I want to make it one more time, is that we're either moving forward or we're moving backward. We're not standing still. In consciousness and in thought, we're either moving in the direction of having things work for us, or we're moving in the direction of saying, things aren't really working, they're not going to work. And so, and when we're under stress, it's a lot tighter a battle for whether we're going to be moving forward or moving backward. And so give yourself permission to to dance, to sing, to meditate, to move forward in celebration of the good that is alive and well in the world.
Indeed. So let's close then. Let's close with a prayer. Oh, I want to read what Ernest Holmes wrote again as a closing. If that's okay with you. Ernest Holmes said, it's in the book, The Essential, Ernest Holmes, we are now seeing the necessity of a world law to the maintenance of which all nations, great and small, shall contribute the best they have, that the strong shall protect the weak without overpowering them, that the great shall live with the small without subduing them, that cooperation shall take the place of aggression, that government shall rule without tyranny through the common consent of the governed, and that individual freedom shall unfurl its flag of liberty on the ramparts.
That's powerful.
And so it is.
So we're going to end this segment, but we're going to talk first about.
Yes, we're going to invite you by showing you our center's website to donate to the cause, donate to this ministry, to keep it alive and functioning. And we're inviting you to donate to our Center for Spiritual Living. And you may do so by going to this website, CSL, Center for Spiritual Living, palmbeaches.org, and clicking ways to donate. But right now, let's read right here this affirmation because it's for each one of us. And this first line is hard to read, but it says, my investment. My investment today is made with the full realization that God is the source of my supply and returns it to me enriched and multiplied.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Now we're going to sign off and go to a music segment, which I think you'll enjoy.
And we're going to end the recording
Yeah,
before that.
Yes.